glitch, network error. I don't know. Okay, hopefully I can repeat what I talked about. That this book highlights some of the author's torment, suffering that he experienced as a result of his preferences not being publicly accepted. And I'm somewhat feeling this way with some of the burdens that I'm feeling in my own life, so there's some connections that I can make to the text. Yesterday we read through the introduction. The introduction covered some of the critical response to the book, some parallels that can be drawn to Oscar Wilde's life. Let's see. Yeah, I would say it discusses a lot about Oscar's talent, the development of that talent, some of the trials that he went through on his path to writing success. And as it talks about in the introduction, he, towards the end of his life, was stripped of everything. He was arrested, his possessions and estate sold off. He died broke, a broken man. He converted to Catholicism on his deathbed, perhaps as a last-ditch effort to save his immortal soul. But as I've stipulated, religion, in a way, I think that sometimes religions influence societal expectations, which in some way was responsible for his own mistreatment. Yeah, I just feel bad for Oscar Wilde. Okay, without further ado, let's take a look at the preface. The artist is the creator of beautiful things. To reveal art and conceal the artist is art's aim. I'd say, like, whenever we take a look at self-portraits, that's somewhat subverted. The artist is shown. And I think it's true to some extent that art always, in some way, shape, or form, reflects the author. The author's views, ideas, talent, style, thought patterns. So even, I guess all art in a way reveals some portion of the artist. So in some way I would disagree with what it says here. To reveal art and conceal the artist is art's aim. Putting the focus on art. But art cannot exist in an abstract sense. Art cannot exist on its own. It must have a creator. It must have a painter. It must have a sculptor. It must have someone who made it. The Leonardo da Vinci. The Vincent van Gogh, etc. The critic is he who can translate into another manner or a new material his impression of beautiful things. The critic. I think the critic here somewhat plays the same role as the artist. It's like you see something beautiful, you put it into a new form. Writers can do this through poetry, for example. Critic, I think, here is more closely translated in a modern sense to creators, the ones who create. Oh man, I'm gonna go slower today, guys. Yesterday I blew through the intro, but today I'm going to try to focus more on important topics. Let me relax. Try to focus on what I'm reading. And yeah. Thank you for joining, of course. The highest, I'll give my perception or interpretation of what's written here. Not all of it is going to jive because I guess it may or may not be commonly known I'm not a homosexual. But among other things, I'm in a different age, different era. Some of these ideas and concepts may elude comprehension. The highest and the lowest form of criticism is a mode of autobiography. The highest as the lowest form. It's like looking at how things are connected. If people are connected, for example, in a sense, it's like this idea that people, like everything's a reflection, in a way. Everything's connected, everything's a reflection. So, criticism that's levied, I think here, is tied to the creator. It's like the things you say reflect things about you more so than the recipient. At least that's what this is telling me. It's a mode of autobiography. Autobiographies, of course, are works that are written about oneself. So if I were to write a book about my own life, that would be autobiographical in nature. Maybe here it's also referring to self-critiques, like you're your own harshest critic. You're your own worst enemy, kind of thing. It's like you're your own harshest critic. I think it's oftentimes said. Those who find ugly meanings in beautiful things are corrupt without being charming. This is a fault. Corruption. Beautiful things. I guess in a way this could be seen as like all that glitters is not gold kind of thing. Or it could be seen in a way that I guess all that glitters is not gold is probably the closest image to what it's saying here. But it could also be speaking about facades, things that aren't what they seem. And it's referring to it as a fault. Maybe here it's referring more to how people don't find the beauty of things, people who don't see the beauty in something. It's like saying negative about something that's positive. Here it's saying it's corrupt. Those who find beautiful meanings in beautiful things are the cultivated. For these there is hope. Meanings tied to things. It's like beautiful meanings, beautiful things, ugly meanings, beautiful things. I don't know, it could have something to do with how things are perceived. Like, I'm pretty sure it's based on perception. It's like how things are seen. They're the elect to whom beautiful things mean only beauty. There is no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written, that is all. I would agree. Like the writing reflects the quality of the book. The 19th century dislike of realism is the rage of Caliban seeing his own face in glass. Caliban is a monstrous slave in William Shakespeare's play The Tempest. It's like the ugly truth. The 19th century, just like a romanticism, yes, the moral life of man forms part of the subject matter of the artist, but the morality of art consists in the perfect use of an imperfect medium. I don't know, I wish it would expand here on what it means by imperfect mediums. Like when I think of mediums, I think of like paint and canvas. But I think it's referring more to skill here, like the skill that you have when you use those different tools. No artist desires to prove anything. Even things that are true can be proved. I should hope so. Otherwise, what is meaning? If that were not true, does anything mean anything at all? And I don't know, I think I might go into more detail here on an artist's motivation. No artist has ethical sympathies, and yes, it does. They don't have ethical sympathies, and ethical sympathy in an artist is an unpardonable mannerism of style. No artist is ever morbid. The artist can express everything. Thought and language are to the artist instruments of an art. It's like in a way that artists don't have limits. Sorry guys, I'm stuffy, I'm recovering from a sore throat. Yeah, artists, they don't have limits. They don't have constraints. And it's the way the artist sees things are their abilities, their capabilities. Vice and virtue are to the artist materials for an art. Now, some of these concepts I might just not nail, and it is what it is. The book's over 100 years old. From the point of view of form, the type of all arts is the art of the musician. Suggestive of what Walter Pater, whom Wilde admired at Oxford, wrote in Studies in the History of the Renaissance. As I recall, Walter Pater was his aesthetic role model, so to speak. This is in 1873. All art constantly aspires towards the condition of music. I think there was something else I missed. Oh, I guess not. From the point of view of feeling, the actor's craft is the type. All art is at once surface and symbol. Those who go beneath the surface do so at their peril. Curiosity killed the cat. I guess it said. Yeah, I can see that in a way. It's like if you're entering the mind of the artist, sometimes you feel the artist's agony. Those who read the symbol do so at their peril. It is the spectator and not life that art really mirrors. Interesting concept, really. The spectator, the person looking at the art, is what the art reflects, not life. I guess in that way, it's kind of seen as like a mirror. It's like you're looking at something and seeing how it connects and attaches to your own beliefs, opinions, thoughts, perceptions, the way you think, the belief that you assign to the piece of art that you're viewing. I think that's what it's referring to here. The spectator, who's looking at it. Diversity of opinion about a work of art shows that the work is new, complex, and vital. Yeah, I wish we could give some examples. If we use like the example of like a film, it's like kind of like the tomato meter in a way. Or maybe different film critics. Like one film critic may say it's an A, another critic may say it's 3 out of 4. I think that's kind of what it's explaining. It's hard for me to think of anything like that where it's like highly divisive in terms of critical response. Like either you love it or you hate it. I guess like I Heart Huckabees could be a good example where it's like at first it was not critically acclaimed because it wasn't well understood, the messages in the film. And I think that's kind of what it's saying. And maybe even some of Nolan's films like Inception, what was it, Tenet? It's like, it's like not all things are well understood. And the things that aren't understood are reflected in some of the reviews. Some of the reviews are positive, some are not, because it's like, well, that didn't make any sense. Christopher Nolan. Let's see. Yeah, it's vital. When critics disagree, the artist is in accord with himself. It's like, yeah, Christopher Nolan's like patting himself on the back. He's like, yeah, I confused him. I guess that's how it is. It's like I did a good job because people aren't sure what to think about it. Where it's like if everyone is in agreement about it, it's simple in a way. The artist is like, darn, I didn't push people to think critically because it's only open to very limited interpretations. We can forgive a man for making a useful thing as long as he does not admire it. The only excuse for making a useless thing is that one admires it intensely. All art is quite useless, Oscar Wilde says. It's interesting in a way to think about how art is perceived, how artists think of their art. And of course it can be extended to multiple different art forms, multiple different forms of media. It's like, how do musicians think about their songs? Like, how does Taylor Swift think about her songs? How does Steven Spielberg think about his films? It's like, just don't say anything good about the stuff you make. But I think people nowadays, I think, are more it's like they're more proud. They're not like, oh, I made that just because I felt like making that. Like people are more like, yeah, I'm the boss. Especially in the musical arena, you can hear it in lyrics all the time. Chapter 1. The studio was filled with the rich odor of roses. And when the light summer wind stirred amid the trees of the garden, there came through the open door the heavy scent of the lilac, or the more delicate perfume of the pink flowering thorn. In the corner of the divan of Persian saddlebags on which he was lying, smoking, as was his custom, innumerable cigarettes, Lord Henry Wotton could just catch the gleam of the honey-sweet and honey-colored blossoms of a laburnum. Laburnums are poisonous shrubs that bear drooping clusters of yellow flowers, whose tremulous branches seemed hardly able to bear the burden of a beauty so flame-like as theirs. And now the fantastic shadows of birds in flight flitted across the long tussar silk curtains that were stretched in front of the huge window, producing a kind of momentary Japanese effect, making him think of those pallid, jade-faced painters of Tokyo who, through the medium of an art that is necessarily immobile, seek to convey the sense of swiftness and motion. A lot of imagery already occurring at this point in the book. A lot of references to cultural influences. This, in the way that certain effects are created by design and creative choices. The sullen murmur of the bees shouldering their way through the long unknown grass, or circling with monotonous insistence around the dusty gilt horns of the strangling woodbine, seemed to make the stillness more oppressive. The dim roar of London was like the bourdon note of a distant organ. Let me break down some of these terms, some of this terminology. Motion. Motion is in reference to Japanese design, which strongly influenced the aesthetic movement. Not hard to see why. Japan is gorgeous. Recently saw memoirs of a female geisha. I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah, amazing movie. Check it out, guys, if you ever have a chance. Practically any movie set in Japan is going to be just beautiful, gorgeous to watch. Okay, the dim roar. Bourdon is another term to define. Bourdon is a droning bass note. So it's a lot of imagery. Like they're telling us the way things look and the way things sound. Oscar Wilde is, I should say, bees buzzing. They're making it more oppressive. It's like harder to concentrate because you can hear them off in the distance. And it's saying that London was like a distant organ. That tells me that where this is set is perhaps in a suburb or country somewhat removed from the greater London area. Perhaps a city outskirt. In the center of the room, clamped to an upright easel, stood the full-length portrait of a young man of extraordinary personal beauty, and in front of it, some little distance away, was sitting the artist himself. Basil Howard, whose sudden disappearance some years ago caused at the time such public excitement and gave rise to so many strange conjectures. Whatever happened to that guy? I think that happens a lot with famous people like Elvis and like even Frank Sinatra. It's like, did they really die? Like, people say that all the time. Like, even Hitler, there were a lot of theories, like he's hiding out in Argentina somewhere. He didn't actually die in the bunker. Like, imagination just kind of runs away with people sometimes. Like, they didn't really die. They're still alive somewhere. But this guy just disappeared. Similar to Carol Baskin's husband. Yeah. He reappeared to paint. People were making theories, guesses as to what his whereabouts were. As the painter looked at the gracious and comely form he had so skillfully mirrored in his art, a smile of pleasure passed across his face and seemed about to linger there. He was somewhat proud of what he made. It was the case that he was pleased based on what we know about how he looked at his own art. But he suddenly started up and, closing his eyes, placed his fingers upon the lids as though he sought to imprison within his brain some curious dream from which he feared he might awake. I don't know what it means by lids here. Like the lids of the paint cans? It's like locking away memory. I need to blow my nose, guys. Like, I felt sick all day long. Before I forget, what I was gonna say here is, like, hiding a memory. It could be like a traumatic experience or something like that, where it's like it's buried in your subconscious. I think that's kind of what it's referring to here. He's like touching those paint cans and he's like trying to send that curious dream back down from where it came. He sought to imprison within his brain some curious dream from which he feared he might awake. So it seems like it actually even more closely that he wants to continue dreaming. Yeah, he wants to stay locked in the dream. He doesn't want to wake up. Using his art form. Yeah, I gotta blow my nose, guys. I'll be right back. Okay. I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. It is your best work, Basil, the best thing you've ever done, said Lord Henry languidly. Some of these terms I just need to define. Languid. Is he trying to boost his confidence? Is that what's happening here? Okay. As with exhaustion, lacking force or quickness of movement slowly. Perhaps for emphasis. Yeah, it's like this is the best work you've done yet. Like he doesn't want to rattle it off because he wants Basil to fully grasp the essence of what he's saying. I've always found it interesting in a way. It's like the way certain people say things, the speed with which it's communicated. recently someone said, you're saying it too fast. You need to slow down. I think when people say things in a languid fashion or languidly, it's so that way their their meaning is well interpreted. It is well understood. If people are saying things quickly, it's like da 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 da. I want to confuse you, or maybe not, but perhaps it could be the case that what they're saying doesn't have much weight or value. In like a car salesman. Anyway, the best thing you've ever done. You must certainly send it next year to the Grosvenor. Another turn. I need to look up Grosvenor. I don't believe it's governor. A Grosvenor. Master Huntsman. Yeah, even this is not. Oh, like a geographer, writer, or editor. Okay. How those three ideas are interrelated, I have no idea. They have like nothing in common. Well, writing and editing do, but geography. Yeah, I don't know. Grosvenor. The Academy is too large and too vulgar. It has a footnote here, but it's not clear where it links to. Whenever I've gone there, there are either so many people that I've not been able to see the pictures, which was dreadful, or so many pictures that I've not been able to see the people, which was worse. The Grosvenor is really the only place. Is the Grosvenor an actual place? Yeah, I think it's an actual building or something where arts and works are displayed, similar to like a museum, based on how it's used here. Oh man. It's kind of strange how it's like put here. It's like there are so many pictures I can't see the people, and so many people I can't see the pictures. It's like there must be a lot of people if you can't see the pictures. It is kind of like that Times Square effect where it's like they show you a big painting or something and everyone can look at it. A big picture and everyone can look at it. Like the drive-in movie theaters, like everyone drives into the movie theater and they watch that big screen. It's kind of like that in a way. But what's strange here is it says so many pictures that he can't see the people, which is worse. It's just one of those things, guys, that I just may not be able to understand what he actually means. Like, how would that affect the number of how would that affect the number of people that were there? Yeah, I have no idea. To tell you the truth, I have no idea. Picture you're like a stack of paintings just like stacked in front of the door or something, preventing people from getting in. It's like, we can't get in, there are too many paintings in the way. Something like that. Can't actually get in. I don't think I shall send it anywhere, he answered, tossing his head back in that odd way that used to make his friends laugh at him in Oxford. Like, he doesn't want to share it. No, I won't send it anyway. I wonder how many artworks and masterpieces like that have never been seen as a result of that phenomenon. Even some of my own writings, it's like sometimes I keep it like in like a file folder and I never share it. I think a lot of the things are that way, where it's like different writings and even paintings where it's like it's never really intended for public. It's never intended for public appearance. Like, it's not intended for people to see it. It's not intended for an audience. It's like art that's not made with the intent of showing it to anybody. Just not meant to be seen. Lord Henry elevated his eyebrows and looked at him in amazement through the thin blue wreaths of smoke that curled up in such fanciful whirls from his heavy opium-tainted cigarette. Opium is it's a highly addictive painkiller. Yeah. And people, as I referred to yesterday, people used to smoke it in what were known as opium dens. It was a very recreational activity. People could just like sit in there and get high all day, pretty much. Be like, ooh, I feel good. Just be on cloud nine all the time. Not send it anywhere, my dear fellow. Why? Have you any reason? What odd chaps you painters are. You do anything in the world to gain a reputation. As soon as you have won, you seem to want to throw it away. It is silly of you, for there is only one thing in the world worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. A portrait like this would set you far above all the young men in England, and make the old men quite jealous, if old men are ever capable of any emotion. I would say that's a silly thing to say. Like Lord Henry, don't you see that age doesn't remove humanity from people? It does not remove the capacity to feel. He's saying it like once you hit like 60 years of age, you become a robot. It's like, no, Lord Henry, that's not how it is. Old people still, feel happy and sad and lonely, and they have the full spectrum of emotions still, even though they're old. He's saying that also it would give him fame and popularity, and that's also something that I think is extremely interesting. It's like how certain people think about fame. Some people want fame and fortune, and some people don't. And the people that don't, I think it's like the Britney Spears effect, where it's like they don't want to be constantly pursued by paparazzi and stuff like that. Some indie artists even go so far as to remain anonymous, try to remain anonymous to, I think, limit that effect, that like superstar effect. So like I saw a recent video of Justin Bieber. He's like outside of his house, and he's like, they're like, oh my God, Justin, we love you. And he's like, you guys can't be here. This is my house. It's like that kind of thing, right? Where it's like you can't ever take it back. I think fame's one of those things you can never take back, right? Like, people are going to be recognizing, like, Drake, for example, until he's, probably, like, 100 years old or something like that. Like, they're always going to recognize him. He's always going to need, like, a bodyguard or something like that, walking around with him, because if he doesn't have one, like, people are always going to be like, oh, Drake, can I get your autograph? That kind of thing. They're always going to recognize him. And I wonder if those celebrities ever wish they could trade that fame back for the glory days when no one knew who they were. They could walk down the street without being recognized. Here, it seems that Lord Henry doesn't think that that should be a concern for Basil. He's like, yeah, do it, dude. You can be the next rock star. Back before there actually were rock stars. Um, it's silly. Yeah, in here, Lord Henry's saying it's silly to want to throw away the reputation, but I wonder what Lord Henry's rationale is for making that statement. It's like, um, like, have you ever been famous, Lord Henry? Have you ever felt the burden of fame? Yeah, I'm pretty sure Britney Spears has felt like that. If you look at her whole like legacy, like anytime people leave the house with the you know jacket on and they got the hat on and they got the stuff covering their face and big glasses and no one can recognize them. Sometimes I think they have that idea. They could explain to Lord Henry. It's like, hey, Lord Henry, the reason why we want to throw away that reputation is because we don't want to be constantly sought after. There is a certain beauty to anonymity. There is value to not being recognized. Like sometimes you just want to go somewhere and just kind of blend in with the crowd. They just like should be there and like literally no one knows who you are. Sometimes that is cool. I don't think anonymity can be undervalued or underestimated. I know you will laugh at me, he replied, but I really can't exhibit it. I put too much of myself into it. It's kind of like it's kind of hard for me to break down. It's like some parts of yourself you don't want people to see, I guess. It's like some doors are best kept closed. I don't know exactly why Basil would be saying this about his own painting. It's extremely beautiful. As it's already been said. Lord Henry stretched himself out onto the divan and laughed. Ha ha ha. Yes, I knew you would, but it is quite rare. It's quite true all the same. Too much of yourself in it. Upon my word, Basil, I didn't know you were ever so vain. And I really can't see any resemblance between you, with your rugged, strong face and your coal black hair, and this young Adonis. I believe he was Aphrodite's boy. Beautiful young man of Greek mythology who is beloved by the goddess. Oh, it says Venus and Persephone. Sorry, Venus and Persephone. Is Venus Aphrodite? I don't know. I don't know enough about Greek mythology. Who was killed by a wild boar? Adonis was. I think he's known for being really, really good looking. Who looks as if he was made of ivory and rose leaves. Why, my dear Basil, he is a narcissist. In Greek mythology, a beautiful youth who falls in love with his or her own reflection. Narcissistic people, they like their own image. They're constantly posting pictures up of themselves. Like, look at me, everybody. Yeah, Instagrammers are a good example of this phenomenon. he is a narcissist, and you will, of course, you have an intellectual expression and all that. But beauty, real beauty, ends where an intellectual expression begins. Intellect is in itself a mode of exaggeration, but destroys the harmony of any face. The moment one sits down to think, one becomes all noise, or all forehead, or something horrid. It's like the whole, don't speak kind of thing. I'd hate to ruin this with all of your knowledge. The harsh truths and realities of the world around us could blow my very mind, and I really just want to enjoy your physique. Or something like that. Running out of light, guys. I don't know if I'll be able to get through the chapter. I think I can. Light. I mean, light. Adonis. Yeah. Look at the successful men in any one of the learned professions. How perfectly hideous they are. Except, of course, in the church. The Church of England, it's meant. But then in the church, they don't think. Ain't that the truth? The bishop keeps on saying at the age of 80 what he was told to say when he was a boy of 18. It's like the Bible never changes concept, right? It's like you're still reciting those same Bible verses of the book that's 2,000 years old. It doesn't grow, it doesn't adapt, it doesn't change. And as a natural consequence, he always looks absolutely delightful. Your mysterious young friend, whose name you've never told me, but whose picture really fascinates me, never thinks. It's like the beautiful fool. I feel quite sure of that. He is some brainless, beautiful creature who should always be here in the winter when we have no flowers to look at, and always here in summer when we want something to chill our intelligence. Don't flatter yourself, Basil. You are not the least like him. It's interesting how he compares thought, like intelligence, to seasons. Be right back, guys. I gotta blow my nose and take a bathroom break. Maybe get a refill too. Hey guys, I'm back. Yeah, I just don't feel well. It's okay. Yeah, it's talking about the seasons and how it's tied to intelligence. It's like his beauty should be there in the winter to give us something beautiful to see, and in the summer to keep us distracted. I think it's saying here to chill our intelligence. Yeah, it's like it's always the beauty's always there to keep us distracted. It's like we always have a picture of someone beautiful to look at all year round. Yeah, like Basil's Dorian is seen that way. It's like we can always look at him. Like, I guess Mona Lisa maybe wouldn't be the best comparison, but something that's beautiful all the time. Don't flatter yourself, Basil, you're not the least like him. You don't understand me, Harry, answered the artist. Of course I'm not like him. I know that perfectly well. Indeed, I should be sorry to look at him. You shrug your shoulders? I'm telling you the truth. There is a fatality about all physical and intellectual distinction, and that sort of fatality that seems to dog through history the faltering steps of kings. It is better not to be different from one's fellows. The ugly and the stupid have the best of it in this world. They can sit at ease and gape at the play. It's like they're it's like someone suffering for their sanity. It's like smart people. It's sometimes said it's like it's lonely at the top. I think sometimes intelligence is that way. It's like where if you're super smart, you have enough time to think about and consider all of life's and the world's problems. It's like you're fretting for the global warming, you're fretting for the public health crisis situation, you're fretting for the growing divide in wealth disparity. Like the more intelligent you are, the more time that you have to think about all these issues, contemporary issues. Whereas people who are not intelligent, ugly and stupid as it's said, can just like watch cartoons. If they know nothing of victory, they are at least spared the knowledge of defeat. Yeah, ignorance is bliss. They live as we all should live, undisturbed, indifferent, and without disquiet. They neither bring ruin upon others nor ever receive it from alien hands. Excuse me. They don't bring ruin. Like live and let live. Your rank and wealth, Harry, my brains, such as they are, my art, whatever it may be worth, Dorian Gray's good looks, we all shall suffer for what the gods have given us, suffer terribly. Yeah. His titles, his brains, the value of the art. I wonder why Basil's so sour about it, so pessimistic. He's like, oh man, bad things are gonna happen because of all this cool stuff we have. Man. Dorian Gray, is that his name? Asked Lord Henry, walking across the studio toward Basil Hallward. Yes, that is his name. I didn't intend to tell it to you. But why not? Oh, I can't explain. When I like people immensely, I never tell their names to anyone. It's like surrendering a part of them. Actually, kind of funny recently, I asked a little girl what her name is, and she refused to tell me. Eventually, she says, my name is Meow.
it's like it is this kind of in a way that it's like if someone refuses to tell you what their name is, they're taking away some of your power because you don't have the ability to identify them. It's like, well, how will I know what to call you? Um, yeah, it's like, how do I know what to how to refer to you? It's like it's already a power battle. And someone's like, oh, I don't want to tell them my name. Here, Basil's kind of saying the same thing. And there's this whole like concept. It's like, what's in a name? Do names even ever really mean anything? Names are given to us, but they're seldom chosen by us. Stormer, for example, my last name was not chosen by me. It was a name I was given when I was born. It's the same way. It's like surrendering a part of them. It's like once they're able to name something, it becomes familiar to them. It's no longer in the realm of the unknown. It's like, oh, I know how to call it now. I know the name of the painting. I've grown to love secrecy. It seems to be the one thing that can make modern life mysterious or marvelous to us. The calmest thing is delightful if one only hides it. It's like some people just love secrets. Sometimes it's cool. It's like, I got a secret, Mr. Roboto Sticks. Even secrets can give some people power over others. If you want to know what I mean, there's like an episode of SpongeBob, the secret box episode. It's like, what's in my secret box? And SpongeBob he's like going nuts like half the episode trying to figure out what's inside. And Patrick eventually opens it for SpongeBob to find. There's nothing in there. But there's a secret compartment. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. But yeah, the power of secrets. It's like you just want to know what the secret is. And our friend Basil is someone who likes to keep them. The calmest thing is delightful if only one hides it. When I leave town now, I never tell people where I'm going. If I did, I'll lose all my pleasure. It's like, where could he be? It's a silly habit, I dare say, but somehow it seems to bring a great deal of romance into one's life. Yeah, I can see that. Like, it is romantic in a way to be somewhere that no one knows where you are, and to know something that no one else knows. I suppose you think me awfully foolish about it. Not at all, answered Lord Henry. Not at all, my dear Basil. You seem to forget that I'm married. And the one charm of marriage is that it makes life a deception. It makes a life of deception absolutely necessary for both parties. It's like keeping things from your married partner. It's like, oh, we gotta keep this thing interesting. She may never know what my favorite color is. It's like we gotta keep it interesting somehow. She can't know what my favorite ice cream is. Once she knows everything there is to know about me, all the fun is gonna be gone. I never know where my wife is, and my wife never knows what I'm doing. Sounds like a great marriage. Like we never know what the other one's doing. When we meet, we do meet occasionally. When we dine out together or go down to the Duke's, we tell each other the most absurd stories with the most serious faces. My wife is very good at it, much better, in fact, than I am. She never gets confused over her dates, and I always do. Match made in heaven. It's like that opposites attract thing. Like, she always remembers it so he doesn't have to. I think those are probably some of the most successful marriages, is when people just naturally compliment each other like that. Yes. But when she does find me out, she makes no row at all. I sometimes wish she would, but she merely laughs at me. Yeah, she only laughs. I hate the way you talk about your married life, Harry, said Basil Howard, strolling toward the door that led into the garden. I believe that you are a really very good husband, but that you're thoroughly ashamed of your own virtues. I would agree. It doesn't seem like this is a marriage where there is a lot of secrets. and I don't know if it's working for Lord Henry. Like, hey, you are an extraordinary fellow, Basil tells him. You never say a moral thing, and you never do a wrong thing. Your cynicism is simply a pose. Being natural is simply a pose, and the most irritating pose I know, cried Lord Henry, laughing, and the two men went out into the garden together and ensconced themselves on a long bamboo seat that stood in the shade of a tall laurel bush. The sunlight slipped over the polished leaves. Again, he's painting a very vivid image here with his words. Like, he's telling us exactly what it looks like. The sunlight slipped over the leaves. In the grass, white daisies were tremulous. As I showed yesterday, white daisies are those flowers with white petals and yellow pollen. After a pause, Lord Henry pulled out his watch. I'm afraid, and back then I think they had what were known as pocket watches, where they would actually pull them out and check them. Nowadays, I guess it's akin to cell phones. Like, check your... Yeah, it's kind of funny in a way. It's like, some things remain the same. It's like back in the day, they would check out their pocket watch and check it for the time. Nowadays, you check out your cell phone and check it for the time. It's like functionally still the same way now that it was then. But it's a phone now. Yeah, it's a smartphone now instead of a mechanical watch. But it still has the same function of telling time. He pulls out his watch, says, I'm afraid I must be going, Basil, he murmured. And before I go, I insist on your answering a question I put to you some time ago. What's that? Said the painter, keeping his eyes fixed on the ground. You know quite well. I do not, Harry. Well, I will tell you what it is. I want you to explain to me why you won't exhibit Dorian Gray's picture. I want the real reason. I think he already told you, Harry. He likes to keep secrets, okay? He likes it when people can't see things about himself that he doesn't want them to see. He says, no, you did not. You didn't tell me the real reason. You said it was because there was too much of yourself in it. Mm-hmm. Now, that's childish. Is it really, though? I don't think it's childish at all. Harry said, Basil Hallward, looking him straight in the face. Every portrait that is painted with feeling is a portrait of the artist, not of the sitter. I've recently likened this to, like, letter writing. Like, when you write a letter to someone, or even about somebody, it's saying more about the person writing it than the person who's receiving it or the subject of the writing. Right? Because it's like we don't write these things about ourselves. Someone else is writing it about us. And the person writing it, it's telling you about their writing style, their background, their education. Which is why I always thought, like, letters of recommendation as interesting. It's like, do you want to know more about me, or do you want to know more about the professors that I had in university? If so, just ask me for letters of recommendation. Because it'll tell you all about them. Pretty interesting stuff. Let's see. Yeah, here it's being used to describe paintings. Like it, the Mona Lisa reflects the painter, not Mona Lisa herself. It's how she was perceived by the person looking upon her. The sitter is merely the accident, the occasion. It is not he who is revealed by the painter, it is rather the painter who, on the colored canvas, reveals himself. Yes. Pablo Picasso, I think, would be a good example of this. It's like the way he paints. It does, in a way, show and explain what he's looking at the time, but the way it's painted tells you about the painter's abilities, how he sees what he's seeing, his own perception. The reason I will not exhibit this picture is that I'm afraid that I have shown in it the secret of my own soul. My dang nose. Lord Henry laughed. And what is that? He asked. I will tell you, said Hallward, but an expression of complexity came over his face. I am all expectation, Basil, continued his companion, glancing at him. Oh, there is really very little to tell, Harry, answered the painter, and I'm afraid you will hardly understand it. Perhaps you will hardly believe it. Lord Henry smiled and leaned down, plucked a pink petaled daisy from the grass, and examined it. I am quite sure I shall understand it, he replied, gazing intently at the little golden white feathered disc. And as for believing things, I can believe anything, provided that it's incredible. Lord Henry. Lord Henry, there you go again, saying something silly. Like, first it was old people not having emotions, and now it's you can only believe incredible things. Like, isn't it supposed to be the other way around? Okay. I'll believe it if it's incredible, Lord Henry says. Okay, Lord Henry. Maybe you should believe things that are believable, Lord Henry, and not just things that are incredible. You must have a very high opinion of the world's then. I only believe things that are incredible. The wind shook some blossoms from the trees, and the heavy lilac blooms with their clustering stars, move to and fro in the languid air. It's like what happens in fall and autumn when like the wind blows through the leaves and it drops all the flowers and stuff on the ground. A grasshopper began to chirp by the wall. And like a blue thread, a long, thin dragonfly floated past on its brown gauze wings. Again, like extremely vivid imagery. Like we know exactly what bugs are there. Lord Henry felt as if he could hear Basil Howard's heart beating and wondered what was coming. The story... there's definitely some stuff going on between these two. The story is simply this, said the painter after some time. 2 months ago, I went to a crush that's a crowded party at Lady Brandon's. You know we poor artists have to show ourselves in society from time to time. Just to remind the public that we are not savages. With an evening coat and a white tie, as he told me once, anyone, even a stockbroker, can gain a reputation for being civilized. I don't know. I've always thought of artists not as like savages, but as cultured people. It's like you need a certain level of skill, and the skill is typically derived from education or practice. I looked up a vocabulary term yesterday. It meant self-taught, and I can't remember what the word is. Oscar Wilde himself was that way. Stuffy those guys. Well, after I'd been in the room for about 10 minutes talking to huge overdressed dowagers and tedious academicians, I suddenly became conscious that someone was looking at me. I turned halfway around and saw Dorian Gray for the first time. Is this Lord Henry that's turning around? Oh no, it's Basil. I guess this is the real. Yeah, this is the real Dorian Gray that he's looking at. And my heart skipped a beat. I saw your face and wow. That's Basil when he saw the real Dorian Gray at Lady Brandon's party. He's like, whoa. How's it going, hot stuff? Yeah, that's how it was. When our eyes met, I felt that I was growing pale. A curious sensation of terror came over me. I knew that I had come face to face with someone whose mere personality was so fascinating that if I allowed it to do so, it would absorb my whole nature, my whole soul, my very art itself. Dang. I did not want any external influence in my life. You know yourself, Harry, how independent I am by nature. I've always been my own master, had at least always been so till I met Dorian Gray. Then, but I don't know how to explain it to you. Something seemed to tell me that I was on the verge of a terrible crisis in my life. I had a strange feeling that fate had in store for me exquisite joys and exquisite sorrows. The highest highs and the lowest lows. I was in it now, after seeing this extremely handsome guy at the party. I grew afraid and turned to quit the room. It was not conscience that made me do so. It was a sort of cowardice. I take no credit to myself for trying to escape. I think that can happen if, like, whenever you're physically attracted to somebody, sometimes you just feel, like, nervous. You're like, like, you don't know what to say. And I guess this is how he kind of felt towards Dorian. A strange fear gripped him, and he just couldn't ask. Nod to, what's that, the Smiths? Yeah, I think so. I think it is the Smiths. I do not believe that, Harry. Oh wait, hold on. I think I skipped ahead a little bit, guys. Sorry. Yeah, it was a sort of cowardice. I take no credit for myself for trying to escape. Conscious and cowardice are really the same things, Basil. Conscious is the trade name of the firm. It's the insignia of English knighthood. That is all. I don't believe that, Harry. And I don't believe you do either. However, whatever was my motive, and it may have been pride, for I used to be very proud, I certainly struggled to the door. There, of course, I stumbled against Lady Brandon. "You're not going to run away so soon, Mr. Howard," she screamed out. You know her curiously shrill voice? I hate when that happens. You're like trying to leave the party, and then all of a sudden the host comes out of nowhere. He's like, "Whoa! We haven't even started with the, the icebreaker. Where are you going?" It's like, oh God, just let me go. I'm sorry, Basil. Lady Brandon got you before you could leave. Yes, she's a peacock in everything but beauty, said Lord Henry, pulling the daisy to bits with his strong, nervous fingers. He loves me not. I don't know. I don't think it's like that. I think he's just kind of like messing with it. I could not get rid of her. She brought me up to royalties and people with stars and garters, and elderly ladies with gigantic tiaras and parrot noses. I guess that's like how people went to parties back then, like balls and whatnot. She spoke of me as her dearest friend. I'd only met her once before, but she took it into her head to lionize me. I believe some picture of mine had made a great success at the time. At least it had been chattered about in the penny newspapers, which is the 19th century standard of immortality. It's like things in print. It's like it could live a long time. It's like it's immortalized in a way. It's like if you write it down. Suddenly I found myself face to face with a young man whose personality had so strangely stirred me. We were quite close, almost touching. Our eyes met again. You can see a little lightning happen between their eyes. Suddenly I found myself face to face. Our eyes met again. It was reckless of me, but I asked Lady Brandon to introduce me to him. Ooh. Please, what is the gentleman's name? Your ladyship. Perhaps it was not so reckless after all. It was simply inevitable. We would have spoken to each other without any introduction. I'm sure of that. Yeah, whenever Basil can build up enough confidence, maybe he needs a drink or two to go up and approach Dorian Gray. Dorian told me so afterward. He too felt that we were destined to know each other. I think it's always cool when that happens. When you finally muster up enough courage to talk to the person that you're interested in, and they're like, you know what? I felt the exact same way the entire time. That has practically never happened to me, but it is extremely cool when it does happen. Yeah, we felt the exact same way. And how did Lady Brandon describe this wonderful young man? Asked his companion. I know she goes in for giving a rapid précis of all of her guests. I remember her bringing me up to a truculent and red-faced old gentleman covered all over with orders and ribbons, and hissing into my ear in a tragic whisper, which must have been perfectly audible to everybody in the room, the most astounding details. I simply fled. I like to find out people for myself. I think what he's saying here is that he doesn't like rumors, he doesn't like hearsay, he doesn't like people talking about others. He likes getting to know the real deal. But poor Lady Brandon treats her guests exactly as an auctioneer treats his goods. She sells them to the highest bidder? She either explains them entirely away or tells one everything about them except what one wants to know. Really interesting comparison here. Yeah, I don't know. It's like they're the two different things that Oscar Wilde's saying here are really just, it fully encompasses everything. It's like either you're going to explain everything or you're going to leave out crucial details. Aren't those the two main ways you can explain anything? It's like either you're going to explain everything that happens, or you're not, or you're going to tell me everything except the most important thing that I need to know. Poor Lady Brandon, you're hard on her, Harry, said Howard listlessly. My dear fellow, she tried to found a salon and only succeeded in opening a restaurant. How could I admire her? But tell me, what'd she say about Mr. Dorian Gray? Didn't you just hear? She tells you everything you want to know, or she tells you everything except what you want to know. She leaves nothing to the imagination. Oh, something like charming boy, poor dear mother, and I absolute... something like charming boy, poor dear mother, and I absolutely inseparable. Quite forget what he does. Afraid he doesn't do anything. Oh yes, plays the piano, or is it the violin, dear Mr. Gray? Neither of us could help laughing, and we became friends at once. Laughter is not at all a bad beginning for a friendship, and it's far the best ending for one. Part of the reason why comedians have so many friends. Laughter is not at all a bad beginning, and it's the best ending. Said the young lord, plucking another daisy. I think we're almost done, guys. It's the first chapter. Yeah, only a few more pages. That's where I'll end the stream for today. Okay. Howard shook his head. You don't understand what friendship is, Harry, he murmured. Or what enmity is, for that matter. You like everyone, that is to say, you are indifferent to everyone. There aren't people you have a higher opinion of than others. How horribly unjust of you, cried Lord Henry, tilting his hat back and looking up at the little clouds that, like raveled skeins of glossy white silk, were drifting across the hollow turquoise of the summer sky. Yes, horribly unjust of you. I make a great difference between people. I choose my friends for their good looks, my acquaintances for their good character, and my enemies for their good intellects. Sounds like a dang good modus. A man cannot be too careful in the choice of his enemies. I have not got one who is a fool. They're all men of some intellectual power, and consequently they all appreciate me. Is that very vain of me? I think it's rather vain. I think you'd rather have enemies that are not super geniuses. Makes life easier that way. I need to blow my nose again, guys. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. I think it's rather vain. I should think it was, Harry, but according to your category, I must be merely an acquaintance. Again, acquaintances are known for their good looks. Good characters. Good character. So they make the right choices, the right decisions. My dear old Basil, you're much more than an acquaintance, and much less than a friend. A sort of brother, I suppose? Oh, brothers. I don't care for brothers. My elder brother won't die, and my younger brothers seem never to do anything else. Yeah, sometimes life is just like that. It's like, especially back in them days. Some people are just freaking ornery sons of guns. They just never freaking submit. They live to be a ripe old age, and then some people, like, yeah, they want to die young. Harry, exclaimed Howard, frowning. My dear fellow, I'm not quite serious, but I can't help detesting my relations. I suppose it comes from the fact that none of us can stand other people having the same faults as ourselves. Let me see what it's saying here. Maybe because it reminds us of ourselves, it reminds us of the flaws that we have. It's like not comfortable to think of our own flaws. That's why we like people who have different faults than ourselves. I quite sympathize with the rage of the English democracy against what they call the vices of the upper orders. The masses feel that drunkenness, stupidity, and immorality should be their own special property. And that, if any one of us makes an ass of himself, he's poaching on the preserves. When poor Southward got into the divorce court, their indignation was quite magnificent. And yet I don't suppose that 10% of the proletariat live correctly. The proletariat, I believe, is the working class, opposite of the bourgeoisie. Yeah, working class. They are the opposite of the bourgeoisie, the rich folk who never have to do anything. I don't agree with a single word that you've said. And what's more, Harry, I feel sure that you don't either. Lord Henry stroked his pointed brown beard and tapped the toe of his patent leather boot with a tasseled ebony cane. How English you are, Basil. That is the second time you've made that observation. If one puts forward an idea to a true Englishman, always a rash thing to do, he never dreams of considering whether the idea is right or wrong. The only thing he considers of any importance is whether one believes it oneself. Now the value of an idea has nothing to do whatsoever to do with the sincerity of the man who expresses it. Indeed, the probabilities are that the more insincere the man is, the more purely intellectual will the idea be, as in the case it will not be colored by either his wants, his desires, or his prejudices. I've likened this concept to like the poker face phenomenon. It's like you try to never reveal your true position. Once people know what you really want, then you're sunk. Basically, it's like, However, I don't propose to discuss politics, sociology, or metaphysics with you. I like persons better than principles, and I like persons with no principles better than anything else in the world. Tell me more about Mr. Dorian Gray. How often do you see him? Every day. What a world. Yo, if we can all see Dorian Gray every day. I couldn't be happy if I didn't see him every day. He's absolutely necessary to me. It's hard to say if Basil here is referring to the painting itself of Dorian Gray or the actual Dorian Gray. It's like he's second nature to me now, like breathing out and breathing in. I believe that's a Dean Martin song. Do you know? I've grown accustomed to his face. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening here with Basil and Dorian Gray. How extraordinary. I thought you would never care for anything but your art. He is all my art to me now, said the painter gravely. I sometimes think, Harry, that there are only two eras of any importance in the world's history. You know, this kind of reminds me of Helga in Hey Arnold with that Arnold shrine. It's like nothing else exists now. It's only him. There is no one else. Nothing else has any significance or value. Dorian Gray. It's the only thing. It's the only thing that's ever existed. He's the only person that's ever lived. There are only two important areas in the world's history. The first is the appearance of a new medium for art, and the second is the appearance of a new personality for art also. What the invention of oil painting was to Venetians, the face of Antonius was to late Greek sculpture. Antonius, for those of you at home, was a beautiful young man who was a favorite of the Roman Emperor Hadrian. He was to late Greek sculpture, and the face of Dorian Gray will someday be to me. It is not merely that I paint from him, draw from him, sketch from him. Of course I've done all that, but he's much more to me than a model or a sitter. I won't tell you that I'm dissatisfied with what I have done of him, or that his beauty is such that art cannot express it. There is nothing that art cannot express, and I know that the work I have done since I met Dorian Gray is good work. It's the best work of my life. There's also kind of like a Doki Doki vibe here. It's like nothing else matters. Everything I create is him, and he is perfection. Perfection given human form, and he mirrors that perfection into my art, and my art is magnificent because of him. Yeah. There's nothing that art cannot express. It's the best work of my life, but in some curious way, I wonder will you understand me? His personality has suggested to me an entirely new manner in art, an entirely new mode of style. I see things differently. Like, yeah, exactly, Doki Doki vibe. Like, I think differently now. I can now recreate life in a way that was hidden from me before. A dream of form in days of thought. Who is it who says that? I forget, but it is what Dorian Gray has been to me. The merely visible presence of this lad, for he seems to me little more than a lad. Though he is really over 20, his merely visible presence, I wonder, can you realize all that this means? Unconsciously he defines for me the lines of a fresh school, a school that is to have in it all passion of the romantic spirit, all the perfection of the spirit that is Greek, the harmony of soul and body. How much that is. Like, yeah, he really, really loves Dorian Gray. It's like, okay, Basil, we know you like him. Let's try to cool it a little bit. Yeah, he's really, really talking about how much he loves Dorian Gray. Oh man, the harmony, how much that is. We, in our madness, have separated the two and have invented a realism that is vulgar, an ideality that is the void. Harry, if you only knew what Dorian Gray is to me. You remember that landscape of mine for which Agnew offered me such a huge price, but which I would not part with? Agnew is a well-known firm of London art dealers. It didn't have a price. He wouldn't sell it. It is one of the best things I've ever done. And why is that so? Because while I was painting it, Dorian Gray sat beside me. Some subtle influence passed from him to me, and for the first time in my life I saw in the plain woodland the wonder I'd always looked for and always missed. So, yeah. Yeah, he's got the hots for Dorian Gray. Yeah, he definitely has heavy feelings for the gentleman. Basil, this is extraordinary. I must see Dorian Gray. Howard got up from his seat and walked up and down the garden. After some time he came back. Harry, he said, Dorian Gray is to me simply a motive in art. You might see nothing in him. I see everything in him. He is never more present in my work than when no image of him is there. He is a suggestion, as I said, of a new manner. I find him in the curves of certain lines, in the loveliness and subtleties of certain colors. That is all. I'd say he's become a type of muse almost. Yeah, he very much is a muse. Like, he sees him and it like informs his work. Like, it's his motivation, it's his drive. Something that causes him to continue to create things. Yeah, it's like he is like the muse. It's like he's causing Basil to create all these things and have appreciation for it. Oh, excuse me. Then why won't you exhibit his portrait? Asked Lord Henry. Maybe because he's afraid that someone else is going to see it and think the same way he does. It's like, Dorian, he's my precious. No one else can have him or know him. For no one else. Because without intending it, he actually is saying, I put into it some expression of all this curious artistic idolatry, of which of course I've never cared to speak to him. He knows nothing about it. He shall never know anything about it. But the world might guess it, and I will not bare my soul to their shallow, prying eyes. My heart shall never put under their microscope. There is too much of myself in the thing, Harry. Too much of myself. Yeah, it's like he hasn't explained these things to Dorian, and he doesn't want to make other people privy to it. Yeah, it's kind of like a special kind of bond. Yeah, it's like a special kind of bond, I would say. Yeah, it's pretty dang spectacular. Good on you, Oscar Wilde. Good on you. Poets are not so scrupulous as you are. They know how useful passion is for publication. Nowadays, a broken heart will run to many editions. I hate them for it, cried Howard. An artist should create beautiful things, but should put nothing of his own life into them. We live in an age when men treat art as if it were meant to be a form of autobiography. It's like, it's my art, it shows you who I am. He's saying really art should not be that way. Make things that do not have connection to yourself. We have lost the abstract sense of beauty. Someday I will show the world what it is, and for that reason, the world should never see my portrait of Dorian Gray. The abstract sense of beauty. Pretty heavy idea here. They'll never see the portrait of Dorian Gray. It's like a world unseen. Like a hidden world. It's like he doesn't want the world to see the hidden world. He wants the world to see itself. Yeah, he's like, I only want them to see, like the surface of the glacier. I don't want them to see what's going on underneath that. I think you're wrong, Basil, but I won't argue with you. It is only the intellectually lost who ever argue. Tell me, is Dorian Gray very fond of you? Is he fond of you, Dorian Gray? The painter considered for a few moments. He likes me, he answered after a pause. I know he likes me. Of course I flatter him dreadfully. I flatter him dreadfully. I find a strange pleasure in saying things to him that I know I shall be sorry for having said. I think here it's somewhat clear that Basil has stronger feelings for Dorian than are returned to him. Yeah, it's like he has his own regrets for things that he says to Dorian. He doesn't say that Dorian's saying these things back to him. He's saying, I feel kind of bad for some of the things that I say to Dorian. As a rule, he is charming to me, and we sit in the studio and talk of 1,000 things. Now and then, however, he is horribly thoughtless and seems to take a real delight in giving me pain. Then I feel harried that I have given away my whole soul to someone who treats it as if it were a flower to put in his coat. A bit of decoration to charm his vanity, an ornament for a summer's day. It's like it's now balanced. Like Dorian's the hero, and Basil's like, you're almost done. Last page of the first chapter. Days in summer, Basil, are apt to linger, murmured Lord Henry. Perhaps you will tire sooner than he will. Yeah, sad when that happens. It's like, yeah, they're not on completely the same wavelength. It's a sad thing to think of, but there is no doubt that genius lasts longer than beauty. That accounts for the fact that we will all take such pains to overeducate ourselves. I don't know that that's true. Certainly beauty deteriorates with age, but I think so does intelligence in some way. It's like your brain starts breaking down. You start to forget things. For some people, they get an onset of mental health problems, like they get delirious. Yeah, the brain starts deteriorating. It becomes harder for people to put things together. It's like, oh, I can't remember where I left that. He's saying that wit lasts longer than beauty, though, which is why people undergo education. In the wild struggle for existence, we want to have something that endures, and so we fill our minds with rubbish and facts in the hope of keeping our place. And I think of the brain as like a sponge. Like, there's only so much it can absorb, right? And it's like new facts enter and push out old facts. In the silly hope of keeping our place. The thoroughly well-informed man, that is the modern ideal. It's like whoever has the biggest sponge for a brain wins. Whoever can retain the most random bits of information. In the mind of the thoroughly well-informed man is a dreadful thing. Yeah, he's saying it's not just an ideal, but it's a dreadful thing. It's like a bric-a-brac shop. All monsters and dust, with everything priced above its proper value. I guess the modern equivalent would be like a pawn shop. Like, everything here is priced higher than it's actually worth. You're always going to be overpaying. I think you will tire first, all the same. Someday you will look at your friend, and he'll seem to you to be a little out of drawing, or you won't like this tone of color, or something. You'll bitterly reproach him in your own heart, and seriously think that he has behaved very badly to you. Basically, your feelings will diminish over time. The next time he calls, you will be perfectly cold and indifferent. It'll be a great pity, or will alter you. Like when you first had feelings for each other, like you were crazy about him, and it's like over time, like it's like what goes up must come down, kind of thing. It's like you're crazy about him then, and then over time your feelings fade, and you grow emotionally distant, and you stop caring as much. What you've told me is quite a romance of art, one might call it, and the worst of having a romance of any kind is that it leaves one so unromantic. It's like, how long do these feelings truly last? Harry, don't talk like that. As long as I live, the personality of Dorian Gray will dominate me. You can't feel what I feel. You change too often. He's like, I'm more constant than you are, Lord Henry. Ah, my dear Basil, that's exactly why I can feel it. Those who are faithful know only the trivial side of love. It is the faithless who know love's tragedies. It's like Lord Henry's had a broken heart in his life. Basil's more like la 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 di da. I'm in love, 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 love. And Lord Henry's like, he's like, I've broken up before. He's like, dang it, my heart's been trampled on by a dame in my life. Hey Prada, I'll be right back. Gotta use the bathroom. Lord Henry, yo, he's had a broken heart. Okay, I'm back. Huh. Alright, Prada. Yeah. Like, I heard something that doesn't make any sense. Like, huh? Yeah, but anyway, Lord Henry is more like me. He's like, I've spent time with a broken heart. And Basil's like, I'm in love with a wonderful man. And Lord Henry struck a light on a dainty silver case and began to smoke a cigarette with a self-conscious and satisfied air as if he'd summed up the world in a phrase. It's like, I've had my heart broken too many times by this cruel world. I know love isn't all it's chalked up to be. Half the marriages end in divorce for this exact same reason. Yeah, Dorian Gray. Prada. Hope you're enjoying. There was a rustle of chirping sparrows in the green lacquered leaves of the ivy, and the blue cloud shadows chased themselves across the grass like swallows. How pleasant it was in the garden, and how delightful other people's emotions were. Much more delightful than their ideas. Excuse me. Yeah, emotions. I think emotions are tied to ideas, right? It's like how you feel about things are rooted in how you think about things. Here it seems like Lord Henry doesn't think that way. He thinks that like emotions and ideas are different. He's even comparing them, it seemed to him. One's own soul and the passions of one's friends, those were the fascinating things in life. He pictured to himself with silent amusement the tedious luncheon that he had missed by staying so long with Basil Howard. Had he gone to his aunt's, he would have been sure to have met Lord Goodbody there, and the whole conversation would have been about feeding of the poor and the necessity for model lodging houses, social equity kind of stuff, like how are we going to feed the hungry? How are we going to clothe the people without clothes and provide homes for the homeless? I think that maybe would have been a better time than listening to Basil, fawn about Dorian Gray for several hours. Each class would have preached the importance of those virtues, for whose exercise there was no necessity in their own lives. The rich would have spoken on the value of thrift, and the idle grown eloquent over the dignity of labor. It was charming to have escaped all that. As he thought of his aunt, an idea seemed to strike him. He turned to Hallward and said, "My dear fellow, I have just remembered." "Remembered what, Harry?" "Where I heard the name of Dorian Gray." "Where was it?" asked Hallward with a slight frown. "Don't look so angry, Basil. It was at my Aunt Lady Agatha's. She told me she had discovered a wonderful young man who was going to help her in the East End. That's the poorest section of London. And that his name was Dorian Gray. I'm bound to state that she never told me he was good looking. Women have no appreciation of good looks. Ain't that the truth? At least good women have not. She said that he was very earnest and had a beautiful name. I once pictured to myself a creature with spectacles and lank hair, horribly freckled and trampling about on huge feet. I wish I had known it was your friend." I think they just have different opinions about his appearance. Like, he's going off of Lady Agatha's description of this guy. He's a man's man. He's not really a ladies' man. Like, guys have a higher opinion of him than women do. Yeah, guys have a higher opinion of him than women do, especially Basil Hallward. "I'm very glad you didn't, Harry. Why?" "I don't want you to meet him." "You don't want me to meet him?" "No. Mr. Dorian Gray is in the studio, sir," said the butler, coming into the garden. "You must introduce me now," cried Lord Henry, laughing. He's like, "Now that you've told me what this guy has done for your art, I really want to meet him. See if he really is hot stuff." Like, I gotta see this guy with my own eyes to see if he gives me the same satisfaction. The painter turned to his servant, who stood blinking in the sunlight. "Ask Mr. Gray to wait, Parker. I shall be in a few moments." The man bowed and went up the walk. Then he looked at Lord Henry. "Dorian Gray is my dearest friend," he said. "He has a simple and a beautiful nature. Your aunt was quite right in what she said of him. Don't spoil him. Don't try to influence him. Your influence would be bad. The world is wide and has many marvelous people in it. Don't take away from me the one person who gives my art whatever charm it possesses. My life as an artist depends on him." It's like he's afraid that Lord Henry's going to get feelings for him too once he sees and meets Dorian Gray. Yeah, I don't know. "Mind, Harry, I trust you." He spoke very slowly, and the words seemed wrung out of him almost against his will. "What nonsense you talk," said Lord Henry, smiling, and taking Hallward by the arm, he almost led him into the house. Yeah, it's like... Yeah, Basil's like, "My boyfriend is the most wonderful in the world." He doesn't want Lord Henry to meet him because he doesn't want to lose him to Lord Henry. Or maybe he's afraid, like he says, influence. Maybe he's afraid Lord Henry will talk to him. It'll change the way Dorian sees things. He'll start influencing Dorian's ideas, and then Dorian may be less attractive in a way to Basil. It's like a hill covered with snow, kind of. It's like, when I see the hill, it's beautiful. And then if Lord Henry talks to Dorian, it's gonna be like there's foot tracks in the snow or something like that. Like, it won't be as beautiful as it once was once he has a chance to talk to Lord Henry. It's like it was so clean and pure before, and now you've influenced it with your ideas, and now it's not as it's not as clean as it once was. There's dirt, dirt marks or something, tracks on the snow, and it's making it not as beauteous as it once was. So that was the first chapter, guys, of Picture of Dorian Gray. We heard a lot about Basil and his relationship with Dorian. We saw a little bit about Basil's relationship with Lord Henry, too. Lord Henry and Basil are more friends. Basil and Dorian are more lovers. Dorian being Basil's muse, his inspiration, his hope, his drive, his dream, his ambition. As we continue to read in Picture of Dorian Gray, we'll have a chance to see more how those pieces, those people interact, how those different pieces fall, and how the relationships grow. Thank you so much for watching Stormer Show. I hope you enjoyed. I will be posting this also to YouTube for reference for people who want to follow the series, Picture of Dorian Gray. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the support, the views, the shares, the donations. Everything helps. Thank you for watching. This is Stormer Show, signing off.